Dan Itse, I give you the mic.
Thank you, sir. First, I'm going to ask you that if, well, I'm here, you're all cold. My job here is to get you all warmed up. Now, if you like what I have to say, I'm going to ask you to walk over to the gentleman over there and give him your name and your town and your email address, and that will become evident at the end. Now, if you understand, our government is built on Lockean social contract principles. Every individual has the right to protect themselves, their life, their liberty, and their property. By the way, that is in our Constitution. But what you need to understand is we formed our government for the express purpose of combining our individual forces to make ourselves more effective. Now, how many of you know the reason why we have a state of New Hampshire? There is one singular reason. Therefore, for the preservation of peace and good order, and for the security of the lives and properties of the inhabitants of this colony, we conceive ourselves reduced to the necessity of establishing a form of government. And pursuant to those words, later that year, in 1776, they created a militia statute, which begins like this. Whereas it is not only the interest but the duty of all nations to defend their lives, property, liberties, and properties in that land which the supreme ruler of the universe has bestowed upon them, against all unlawful attacks and depredations of all enemies, whatever, especially those who are moved by a spirit of avarice and despotism. That law required every man of this state to own a firearm. And those who could not afford one, the town provided it. And if you abused that firearm, you got flogged, and you had to pay for it anyway. Now, 10 years later, we created a new government, a better constitution with a Bill of Rights. And it says that every member of the community has a right to be protected by it in the enjoyment of their life, liberty, and property. Does that sound familiar? And he is bound, therefore, to contribute to his share of the expense of such protection and to yield his personal service when necessary. What does that sound like? Does that sound like the militia? Well, Article 24, now this is important, because our Bill of Rights, every article in it, is either something that the government must do or something the government cannot do. A well-regulated militia is the proper, natural, and sure defense of a state. Well, that isn't something the government can't do, so that must be something the government must do. This government is obligated to organize every man and woman in this state into a well-regulated militia for our common defense and protection. And they wrote a new militia law. And it began, whereas it is the duty and interest of every state to have a militia thereof properly armed and trained in complete readiness to defend against every violence or invasion whatever. And that militia law still required every man of the community to be armed and to have all the necessary accoutrements. Well, a lot of time has passed since then. But you know, the Congress of the United States prepared a report, and they said a state defense force is a form of militia. Quote, state defense organizations might relieve the burden on regular forces in their local and state areas by helping to defend critical infrastructure. Such forces could also assist in maintaining order and otherwise assist in incident response, potentially reducing the demand for Title 32 and Title 10 assets during disasters and catastrophic terrorist incidences. Just think of that. Would you like to be part of such an organization? Would you like to have a state that when we have a Katrina and the federal government comes in and says, we're here to save you, and we can say, thank you? No. This is our job. We take care of ourselves, thank you. Now, we do still have a set of militia laws, RSAs 110 and 111. They describe the National Guard, a state guard, and the unorganized militia, which is in fact an oxymoron. Because a militia must have a chain of command, and to have a chain of command, you must be organized. But that notwithstanding, we have laws that require or provide for the government to create a state guard. I proposed an amendment to those laws this year that would make it more effective, make it so there was all volunteers, so that issues of liability were all addressed as the Attorney General said we ought to. But last Wednesday, that change was voted down. It was voted down because the Adjutant General said, as long as he is in command, there will not be a state guard. How does that sit with you? Okay. Now there's an important thing to remember. My son-in-law, he's a meteorologist attached to the Rangers Special Operations Force. Special Operations Force Rule 1. A competent force cannot be created after emergencies occur. I ask you now, are you willing to render your personal service when necessary to defend the lives, liberties, and property of your friends and neighbors? Yes. Thank you. Do you believe it is your right to be organized into a state guard at some time in the future? Yes. Then I ask you to come over and give your name, your town, and contact to Vince Milano. Thank you, and God bless you. God bless this great state of New Hampshire and the people who created it.
Once again, sometimes it's hard to follow people up. Thank you, Dan, for that inspiring speech.
Crop tape.